promise, God helping me, to abstain from the use of all distilled, fermented, and malt liquors, and that means wine and beer. I don't drink, and I will do all I can to keep you from drinking.
In the mid and late 19th century, you had a temperance movement, where temperance activists tried to convince people who drank alcohol that drinking's a sin, and thus you should stop drinking. And that didn't work. And so the state tried coercion, and that's what prohibition is. It's coercion. You outlaw alcohol and you arrest drinkers.
This was largely considered to be an issue driven by the church and by women. And it's important to remember that the people who wanted to ban alcohol, there was real problems they were trying to solve that especially impacted women at the time. Spending a big portion of your paycheck at a saloon. Also, men who would drink and become violent. A lot of that violence would be carried out in the household in the form of domestic violence against a wife or against children.
Before the 18th Amendment was enacted, there was actually wartime prohibition. The idea was we needed to save grain and keep people healthy and things like that during the war.
The drive towards prohibition came in a number of waves. The national drive, as well as Wisconsin's resistance to that, was related to immigration.
Milwaukee was a city of immigrants in 1920. There were Germans, Italians, Irishmen, Poles, and for those folks, it was laughable to think that something as healthy as alcohol, something the Germans called liquid bread, was not healthy for you to consume. In the old country, alcohol was a part of a meal. In Italy, it might be wine. In Germany, it might be beer. But here, suddenly, the puritanical Anglo-Saxon traditions of the old Yankees said that drinking was, in some people's minds, a sin.
If you look at the German community in Milwaukee prior to World War I, the curriculum was primarily taught in German. German was the primary language in schools. But with the beginning of World War I and Kaiser Wilhelm and the Germans being looked upon as one of the main causes of World War I, that changes. Being of German ancestry, they did face a lot of discrimination.
German Americans at the time felt the pressure of being separated from the fabric of Americanism because people were focusing on their cultural identity and equating it to the negative identity of what was happening in Germany at the time. There was a big feeling that their culture was being repressed because folks were trying to deny them beer. The fact that so much of their wealth was built on the breweries and on all the jobs that came about as a result of the breweries, making barrels, making storage, the transportation of bringing this. This was affecting people economically too.
They saw the arrival of the European ethnics as an erosion of their more traditional way of life. And in one sense, the Yankees were correct. They were losing their grip on politics. They were losing their grip on public service to many of these newly arriving folks. The Irish swelled the ranks of the police and fire departments. The Germans led the city. Dan Hohn, who was mayor of Milwaukee for 24 years, was German on his mother's side, Irish on his father's side, and socialist in his political proclivities.
Everything that the Germans were doing transferred into daily life here in Milwaukee, thousands and thousands of miles away. This is Kegel's Inn's. It says, in New York, it's the Waldorf. In Milwaukee, it's Kegel's Inn. Some bold marketing. So John and Anna were both from Slovenia, which actually was under the cover of Austria back in the day. The rise of power in the Eastern European bloc was rising, and young kids were basically cannon fodder in the First World War. So most of the kids ended up immigrating to the U.S. And Milwaukee, being sort of the German cultural icon of the United States, was an easy place to plant down here. Everything that you see, from the woodwork to the floors to the chairs to the murals and the stained glass, was meant to convey a sense of German culture. They wanted to bring the best parts of Germany to Milwaukee. So one of the first things you'll notice when you walk into our dining room, a lot of the murals are not the same as what we see in the original building. The painter finished in 1945, and so some of the major murals were purposefully painted as English hunting scenes to convey this allegiance to the Allies. During that time, nobody spoke German. Waitresses forgot their dirndls. It was this fine dining aspect. They had live music. And so they didn't want to be known as German. They just wanted to be the place where you could enjoy a beer and a beverage and great food without the stigma of being German.